Justin Gaethje is the UFC featherweight champion of the world. Let that sentence sit for a moment. Because 2 weeks ago, every credible analyst in the sport had Ilia Topuria finishing him inside 2 rounds. Every prediction model had Topuria retaining. Every pre-fight narrative had Gachi walking into the most dangerous puncher in the division's history and paying the price for it. And then Sunday night happened on the White House lawn in front of what the Secretary of State told us would be 1 billion people watching globally. And the man who was supposed to be finished in 2 minutes instead finished the fight himself, via corner stoppage after the 4th round, and walked out of that octagon as the undisputed featherweight champion of the world. Mixed martial arts is the most unpredictable sport on the planet. Sunday night was the proof. Start with the main event because everything else on this card, and there was an enormous amount of everything else, flows from what happened between Topuria and Gachi in those 4 rounds. The fight went exactly the way Gachi needed it to go and exactly the opposite of what Topuria promised it would. Topuria did not finish it in the first 2 minutes. He did not finish it in the 1st round. He did not finish it in the 2nd round or the 3rd. And by the time the 4th round ended, the damage he had absorbed was severe enough that his corner made the decision to stop the fight before the 5th could begin. A corner stoppage. In a featherweight championship fight. Against a man who had promised the world a 1st-round finish and had delivered exactly that against 3 consecutive all-time legends before this night. The sport broke its own script completely. Gachi described his mindset after the fight in terms that explain exactly how he survived long enough to win it. He said he prepared for loss and embarrassment. He said he consciously entered that octagon having accepted the possibility of the worst outcome so that he could reach a primal competitive state that was beyond the reach of fear or calculation. He admitted Topuria hurt him. He admitted Topuria rocked his chin and damaged his body in ways that would have broken other fighters at earlier points in the night. He refused to break. And when it was over, when his hand was raised and the crowd that had come to see Topuria retain erupted in the kind of shock that only this sport produces, he looked at his own face, noted the damage with something that sounded like clinical curiosity, and said something was wrong with it. Doctors watched in disbelief. Gachi watched with something closer to satisfaction. The MMA community's reaction was immediate and universal in its acknowledgement that something genuinely historic had just happened. Volkanovski, the man Topuria finished to announce himself as a champion, said absolutely insane ending to a crazy night. Max Holloway, another man Topuria finished, said just wow. Francis Ngannou said never count Gachi out, congratulations champ. Ariel Helwani said Gachi's career culminated in an unlikely moment and that he deserves his flowers. Jamal Hill said USA and noted that Gachi made everyone eat their words. Belal Muhammad called it a no-moss moment. The response across the board was not just celebration of a result. It was acknowledgement of a moment that changes the historical record of the division permanently. Topuria loses for the first time. Gachi wins a belt he has been chasing for his entire career. On the White House lawn. On America's 250th birthday. In front of 1 billion people. The circumstances were as large as the result. Topuria was transported to hospital for medical evaluation following the fight. The corner stoppage tells you everything you need to know about the physical state he was in at the end of the 4th round. A man who promised 1st-round violence spent 4 rounds absorbing punishment severe enough that the people who know him best, the people in his corner who have watched him train every day and who understand his body better than anyone, decided that the 5th round was not something he should be asked to survive. That decision is the most honest assessment of what Gachi did to him over those 4 rounds. And it reframes the entire pre-fight narrative in the harshest possible way. The predictions were wrong. The timeline was wrong. The outcome was wrong. Only the violence was accurate. Now move to the co-main event because what happened between Cyril Gane and Alex Pereira was the second most significant result of the night, and it produced its own set of controversies that deserve direct examination. Gane defeated Pereira via TKO in the 2nd round and became interim heavyweight champion again. The performance was described across the board as sharp, controlled, and dominant from the opening bell. Gane looked like the best heavyweight in the world on Sunday night. He moved well. He struck cleanly. He managed distance with the precision that has always defined his best performances. And he finished it in the 2nd round against a man who was attempting to become the first 3-division champion in UFC history. But the finish itself is where the night became complicated. Almost immediately after the stoppage, significant portions of the MMA community began raising concerns about illegal strikes. Ariel Helwani questioned whether several hammer fists had connected to the back of Pereira's head during the finishing sequence. Others pointed to what appeared to be elbows landing in the same prohibited area before the TKO was called. Josh Barnett, who had his own fight to analyze on the same card, watched the Gaethje finish in real time and commented on it specifically, noting what he described as cheap shots and eye pokes as part of Gaethje's broader fighting style. The controversy did not resolve itself during the broadcast. It entered the post-fight conversation as an unresolved question about whether the finish should stand as called or whether the illegal strikes warrant further review. That question does not have an easy answer, and the sport will be debating it for days. Pereira's response to the loss was uncharacteristically uncertain. He said he plans to sit down with his team, review everything, and discuss his future before making any decisions. For a man who has moved through the sport with the conviction of someone who always knows exactly what comes next, that uncertainty is itself a statement. The attempt at heavyweight was bold in a way that very few fighters in the sport's history have been bold. He walked into a division where he was physically smaller than almost every serious contender, against one of the best movers and technicians the weight class has ever produced, and he took the fight anyway. John Silva defended him publicly after the loss, saying people should never speak ill of someone who failed while attempting something that had never been done before in pursuit of becoming a living legend. That framing is accurate, and it is the framing that history will likely settle on when this chapter of Pereira's career is evaluated. John Jones reacted to the result on Instagram wearing a goat necklace and congratulating Gaethje, which is exactly the kind of layered communication Jones has always been capable of. Congratulating the winner while wearing a symbol of his own status is not subtle. It is Jones reminding everyone that the division's actual narrative still runs through him regardless of what happens at the interim level. Gaethje's call for a unification fight in Paris in September against Tom Aspinall now sits at the center of the heavyweight picture. Aspinall, who was not cleared to fight on this card, holds the undisputed title. Gaethje holds the interim. The math is straightforward. The fight gets made. The location, Paris, in front of a French crowd for Gaethje, adds a dimension that makes it commercially and emotionally significant beyond the competitive stakes. Josh Barnett continued his undefeated run in the UFC with a second-round TKO over Derek Lewis that improved his record to 10-0 overall and 4-0 inside the organization. The performance was dominant in a way that Barnett's UFC appearances have all been dominant. Grappling control in the first round, physical punishment in the second, a finish that left no ambiguity about who the better fighter was on the night. Lewis, for the second consecutive time, did not answer the bell in the way his reputation as a one-punch knockout artist requires to remain competitive against elite opposition. Barnett called out Alex Pereira after the fight with the specific phrase he has been deploying consistently, "I want a shama on your mama," which at this point is less trash talk and more brand architecture. Henry Cejudo said Barnett could be up next for a title shot. Belal Muhammad said a Barnett versus Aspinall fight would be good. The undefeated record is the argument. It is becoming very difficult to ignore. Sean O'Malley had the kind of performance at the White House that his career has been building toward since his debut. He defeated Imad Zahabi via TKO in the second round, snapping a 7-fight winning streak that had made Zahabi one of the division's most dangerous dark horses coming into the fight. The finish came off a sharp combination that sent Zahabi to the canvas. O'Malley saluted the crowd. The moment was immediately compared to Alex Pereira's famous post-knockout celebration over Jamal Hill. Henry Cejudo praised his technical approach. Brian Ortega congratulated him. And O'Malley made clear immediately after the fight who he wants next, Petr Yan, who was not present at the event despite being the logical next opponent. Whether Yan versus O'Malley gets made now depends on the UFC's appetite for a rematch, but O'Malley's performance on the biggest card in the organization's history made the ask harder to deny. The one controversy surrounding the O'Malley finish came from Terrence McKinney, who said publicly that the referee stepped in too quickly, that the fight had just started getting interesting when it was stopped. The stoppage debate is one of the sport's permanent arguments, and it produces genuine disagreement among people who watch the same replay and see different things. What is not debatable is the result. O'Malley has the finish. The performance bonus argument is one he made himself, and it is not an unreasonable one given the context of the card. Jamal Hill's observation about the event deserves a moment of honest acknowledgement because it raises a real question about the sport's institutional culture. He noted on social media that there were no UFC fighters in attendance at the White House who were not competing that night. His conclusion was direct: They don't really care about us. The observation that a historic event featuring the sport's biggest stars did not produce attendance from the broader fighter community reflects something real about the relationship between the organization and the athletes who make it commercially viable. Whether that relationship is structurally fair or exploitative is a conversation the sport has been having for years. Hill's post brought it back to the surface on the biggest night in the organization's history, which may or may not be a coincidence. Mauricio Ruffy defeated Michael Chandler via knockout in the first round and then proposed to his girlfriend inside the Octagon on the White House lawn immediately after. The fight itself was as one-sided as the pre-fight odds suggested it would be. Ruffy came out with speed and precision that overwhelmed Chandler from the opening exchange. The stoppage came quickly. Alexander Volkanovski, who was in Ruffy's corner, had a live reaction that will be replayed for years. And Chael Sonnen's post-fight comment about Chandler, "Great career, let's wrap it up," reflected what most of the MMA community was thinking but few were willing to say directly. Chandler has now won 2 of his last 8 UFC fights. The body of work at this point in his career tells a specific story. Whether he is willing to hear that story is the question only he can answer. Bo Nickel defeated Kyle Daukaus via TKO in the first round in front of what he described as 85,000 people, the largest live crowd of his career. He threw shirts and candy into the crowd afterward. He described the atmosphere as unbelievable. And then he said exactly what Bo Nickel always says, in exactly the way Bo Nickel always says it. Nobody can hang with him in the wrestling realm. His other skills are catching up. His goal is to be the best fighter in the world. He does not care who they give him next. He is coming for the belt. The performance solidified what the analysts have been saying about his trajectory. The wrestling is elite. The striking is improving. The ceiling is genuinely unclear, which in this sport is the most exciting thing you can say about a prospect. Diego Lopez defeated Steve Garcia via knockout in the second round in a fight that many had Garcia winning through the first 5 minutes. Lopez was being outworked early, took some clean shots, and then, as he has done throughout his career, made the decision to turn it into a war and trust his finishing instinct. The comeback finish was one of the more dramatic moments of the night on a card that was full of dramatic moments. His post-fight comments were straightforward. He wants to stay active, he is healthy, he wants to prove he belongs at the top of whatever weight class the UFC wants to put him in. The performance on the biggest card in the organization's history gives him the platform to demand exactly that. Here is where everything lands after the White House. The featherweight division has a new champion, and his name is Justin Gaethje. The heavyweight division has an interim champion who wants to fight in Paris and a lineal champion who is posting goat necklace photos on Instagram. The middleweight division has an undefeated prospect calling out everyone. The bantamweight division has an O'Malley who performed on the biggest stage and immediately called out the opponent the UFC has been avoiding booking for months. And the sport itself, after a night that included a corner stoppage in the main event, a controversial finish in the co-main, a first-round proposal, and results that overturned virtually every major prediction, is exactly what it has always been. The most unpredictable sport in the world. The White House card was the proof. And the conversation it produced will last for months.